Hey guys, this is Shankar welcoming you on my YouTube channel Study with the Master. Here I am going to teach you the Constitution of India. भारत का संविधान मैं यहाँ पढ़ने जा रहा हूँ. In which we are going to study. हम पढ़ने जा रहे हैं Constitutional Development of India. भारत के संविधान का विकास. We are going to study. We are going to study of the Constitutional Development of India. And this class will not be bilingual. This will be in English only. So you have to study the class in only English so that you can develop your concept, your knowledge, your understanding in only English so that you can become the master of English language, because English taught in bilingual way is not so important as in the same way in the right form whatever it is given. So try to understand this because if you are competitor of National Defense Academy and the civil services examination, you must study this like this. So the first set I am going to study here. The question first is given here. Which of the following exercise the most profound influence in framing the Indian Constitution? Which of the following exercise the most profound influence in the framing the Constitution of India? That is the Government of India Act 1935. The Government of India Act 1935. The Government of India Act 1935 exercised the most profound influence in framing the Indian Constitution. The Government of India Act 1935 was an act of the Parliament of the United Kingdom. It originally received royal assent in August 1935. It was the longest act of British Parliament ever enacted until Greater London Authority Act 1999 surpassed it. So the next question is, the first attempt to introduce a representative and popular element in the governance of India was made through. The first attempt to introduce a representative and popular element in the governance of India was made through which? That was made through Indian Council Act 1909. Indian Council Act 1909. The first attempt to introduce a representative and popular element in the governance of India was made through Indian Council Act 1909. This act is generally regarded as the Morlamento reforms. As per this rule, the government limited the increase of Indian representatives in the governance of British India. So this was the second question. We are going to study the third question. Which of the following introduced communal electorate in India? Which of the following introduced communal electorate in India? The Morlamento reform 1909. Indian Council Act 1909. Indian Council Act 1909 या Morlamento reform is known as the communal electorate in India. The Indian Council Act 1905 are the Morlamento reforms introduced a system of communal representation for Muslims for accepting the concept of separate electorate. Under this, इसके अंतर्गत the Muslim members were to be elected only by Muslim voters. Thus, the act legalized communalism, and Lord Minto came to be known as the father of communal electorate in India. So the next question is, the fourth one is in assertion. Assertion means कथन के रूप में and reason के रूप में. The fourth question is given here. The Government of India Act 1858 transferred the governance of India from the East India Company to of the Crown. Right? That is correct, totally correct. The next is East India Company was unwilling to administer India anymore. और अधिक शासन करने में unwilling थी या अनिच्छुक थी. That is incorrect. So the answer will be C. and the answer is correct over here, not explanation. Okay, explanation is not given here. So this was the question which was asked in National Defense Academy in 2006. So it is very important question. So next question is, by virtue of which act diarchy was introduced in India? By virtue of which act the diarchy was introduced in India? That was introduced in India by Government of India Act 1919. 1919. Diarchy is the system of double government which was introduced in India by Government of India Act 1919. So it was introduced in India by the Government of India Act 1919. So the next question is, the instrument of instruction contained in the Government of India Act 1935 has been incorporated in the Constitution of India in the year 1950 as a directive principle of state policy. That is the answer. The directive principle of state policy, of the state policy. So the explanation is given here. The directive principles are like instruments of the instruction which were issued to the government, to the governor in general and governors of colonies and to those of India by the British government under the 1935 Act. Under the draft constitution, it was proposed to issue such instructions to the president and the governors. The next of these instruments of the instructions is found in Schedule 4 to the Constitution of India. To the Constitution of India. This was found. The next, the text of these instruments, of instructions is found in Schedule 4 to the Constitution of India. So these were the directive principles of state policy. The instrument of instructions contained in the directive principle of the state policy. The next is, the Government of India Act 1935 was based on. Government of India Act 1935 was based on the principle of federation and parliamentary system. The principle of federation and parliamentary system. This was based on the principle of federation and parliamentary system. The Government of India Act 1935 was based on. The Government of India Act 1935 was passed by the British Parliament in 1935 and came into effect in 1937. It was passed in 1935 and came into effect in not in 36, but it came into effect in 1937. So please pay attention on this. It was based on a report by a joint select committee led by Lord Linlithgow, set up the two houses of the British Parliament. So the next question is here, and we are going to study the next question. The monopoly of Indian trade of the East India Company was abolished by the monopoly of Indian trade of East India Company was abolished by Charter Act 1813. Charter Act 1813. The Charter Act 1813 ended the monopoly of the East India Company in India. However, the company's monopoly in trade with China and the trade in tea was remained intact. Remain intact means it was continued after the end of the monopoly. Even it was continued. The next is, consider the following acts. What is the correct chronological sequence of these acts? The correct chronological sequence of these acts is the Regulating Act. The Regulating Act 1, 2, 3, 4 is the correct. It means the Regulating Act 1773, Pitt's India Act 1784, the Charter Act which is given here It was perhaps to be Charter Act passed were passed between 1933, 19, 1793, 1793 and 1853 too. 1852. And next is Indian Council Act. Indian Council Act was passed in 1861, in 1892 and 1809. So these all were given here. The correct chronological order is 1, 2, 3, 4. So first one is Regulating Act, second Peace India Act, third is Charter Act, fourth is Indian Council Act. So we can study them in this way also. That is given here. The Regulating Act was passed in 1773. The next important act was Peace India Act, which was passed in 1784, and a series of charter acts passed by the British Parliament between 1793 to 1853. After the Great Revolt of 1857, the British government felt the necessity of seeking the cooperation of the East Indians in the administration of their country. In pursuance of this policy of association, three Indian Council Acts were enacted by the British Parliament in 1861, 1892, and 1909. So the correct chronological order is 1, 2, 3, 4. So the answer is 1, 2, 3, 4. So the next question is, the last one is given here. The objective of the Montagu-Chelmsford reform of 1919 was, what was that? That was to give power to the local government is incorrect. To establish hierarchy in the provinces is correct. The extension of provincial government, that is correct. So 2 and 3 is correct. 2 and 3 is correct. So the correct answer is given here, but we are going to study the explanation. The explanation is given here. The Government of India Act of 1919 relaxed the central control over the provinces by demarcating and separating the central and provincial subjects. The central and provincial legislatures were authorized to make laws on their respective list of the subjects. It further divided the provincial subjects into two parts, transferred and reserved. The transferred subjects were to be administered by the governor with the aid of ministers responsible to the legislative council. The reserved subjects, on the other hand, were to be administered by the governor and the executive council without being responsible to the legislative council. This dual scheme of governance was known as hierarchy. So both statements 2 and 3 are correct. So dear, here I have taught you 10 question out of 10 we have studied, and I have tried to explain everything only in English. But dear my friends, try to understand it and study in this way so that in future you can make a history of learning English language, and you can develop yourself to become one of the most successful person in your life. So dear, with these words, I'm going to end my video. Please like, share and subscribe my videos, and do comment please, and press the bell icon also, so that you can get the notification of my new videos. And please like, share and subscribe my videos. Please, thank you very much.